Hello, Michelle, and any other inquiring mind that decided to watch this video, or other invited attendee, if you will, because I'm going to send the link to others as well. I invited you over here so that I could show you a few things and explain a few things as it relates to possible corruption, but a definite cover-up within the EEOC. Yes, it's not just the police. And Michelle, if I may call you Michelle, because I'm not going to use your last name anywhere in this video, though I'm going to use everybody else's last name. When I say cover-up, let's just start with this. Start with Mr. Brubaker, someone in your office, a supervisor. Now, you should be looking at his email that he sent to me, or no, excuse me, my email that I sent to him. You see the date and time right there at the top. Let's focus on the highlighted paragraphs, shall we? And concluding that email, there were 3 areas within which I wanted information. Was he working on Tuesday, January 3rd? Was Ms. Poindexter working Tuesday, January 3rd? An innocuous question. Nothing harmful in answering that because that occurred in the past. It's one thing if someone's asking you if you are going to be at work tomorrow at 4 o'clock at this particular location because a dastardly deed may be in the works. But this occurred in the past. There should be no reason, no, not should, there is no reason, Michelle, for Mr. Brubaker not to answer that question. I asked for your name, your telephone number, your email address. He gave me your name. He gave me the physical address of the building. And then he gave me the general telephone number. You ought to try calling that sometime, Michelle, because nobody has answered each time that I have called. And then just to make matters worse, when I leave a message and no one returned those either. I did get a return message from Miss Galore, but that's because I had like her direct number, and eventually she called me back. And finally, I wanted a detailed explanation as to how it was that Miss Poindexter did not violate my right. I forgot the word right, but did not violate my right to due process. So those 3 particular areas which I wanted information. Now let's go ahead and have a look at Mr. Brubaker's response. I'm sure you might be sitting there nice and comfortable thinking that he answered all pertinent questions. But as you can see, no. Now he did include your last name and the general phone number as I said, but that's his response. Even though I asked him 3 questions, and I do write very well. I'm sure you'll agree. Others have. The conclusion told you exactly what I was looking for, and you did not answer the questions. You refused to answer the questions. Let's scroll down a little further. And he did. I said he gave me your last name. I just omitted it for the sake of this video. And you have to forgive me because like my podcast and the majority of my other videos, there's no script here. So I'm just sitting here talking. And as you can see, I wrote him back rather quickly. Hey, you didn't give me this information. I expect his answer shortly because I've already asked it to you. I shouldn't have to write the questions again. Now let's scroll down to his second response. So he finally gave me your email address, so I omitted that. Sorry, I have read your previous emails, and other than forgetting to include the email address, I stand by them. Maybe you can explain to me, Michelle. What is he standing by? You've seen his unedited, mostly unedited response, because I didn't want to give out your particulars. Where in it did he address any of those other, and have him forward his answers to you, I guess, but where did he address any of the other questions that I asked? There's nothing to stand by because you gave no answers. His response is stupid. His response is stupid. Once again, incompetence maybe? Ineptitude? Maybe you can ask him what he was standing by, because I and the viewers don't see anything to stand by. Now let's scroll down. I basically cut and paste, so I don't know what's coming next, but here we go. Now, I spoke of corruption. I spoke of a cover-up. I spoke of my right to due process being violated. It was violated by Miss Poindexter, another person working underneath you, though not directly. And she called me on December 20th, and I basically pieced together her rather long email. And so we'll go with this first 3 paragraphs, and you see what I have highlighted here. Retaliation is not substantiated in that you already had a history of disciplinary action. Wow, that's kind of funny, because I didn't. You see, well, let's scroll down, because that's right, she did mention it again. So you got your first 3 paragraphs there. There are a few paragraphs in the middle, so you see the ellipses, and then you come to these paragraphs here. And I've got the highlights highlighted for you. Once more, she goes, moreover, because you already had a history, or already had a prior disciplinary history, before your employer was notified of filing with the EEOC, the basis of retaliation has not been established as you believe. And I hit those 2 points first because she's stating right there. She's looked at this case. There has been no retaliation. Now, I'm not addressing the discrimination portion of the complaint. So I talked to the intake worker during the initial interview, and he explained matters to me and explained what would most likely happen as it relates to that discrimination complaint. That being that it likely would be unfounded. I understood and I accepted that because I'm not an unreasonable individual. I understand logic. However, the matter of retaliation can be substantiated even if the original charge is unfounded, or determined to be unfounded or unsubstantiated. That is, unless your name is Ms. Poindexter. Because it actually says on your website, and someone in Washington can arrange to have that changed, but I've already taken a screenshot. It doesn't really matter. Let us look at her earlier paragraph. Do believe I had this right here. Okay. So, I believe it was in the second paragraph. There. And let me just highlight this for you right here. And we'll change the color. No, you can't see there. Had you not had a disciplinary history prior to filing your charge, and adverse actions were taken that proved to rise to the level of discrimination, you may have been able to substantiate retaliation for complaining. Now look at your website, or you may already know the statute. A charge of retaliation can be substantiated even if that original charge of discrimination is unsubstantiated. So why is she telling me this when it's not true? As I said, cover-up, incompetence. Corruption, I'm not so sure. Laziness, quite possible. Irresponsibility, definite. Now let's scroll down further, because I said my rights to due process was violated, and let me just focus on that one last time, because a decision had already been made. Look at the yellow highlights. Retaliation is not substantiated right here, and then again down here. Case closed. Because once again, I'm not dealing with the discrimination. I accept that decision by the EEOC. But you've closed the matter of retaliation. Yet, Here we go to Mr. Brubaker again, January 4th. 2 days ago, by the time you're at least looking at this, by the time this is posted. And he says, typically after receiving a position statement, and this is, we ask complaining party, CP, to give us information or evidence to show that the respondent's defense is a pretext. Sorry about that faux pas, but I probably should have highlighted the sentence above. But here, let's just do it now. In many cases, and switch it back to yellow, they ask the respondent to give them a position statement. That respondent will be the employer. And the employer gave a position statement, and then typically the complaining party, which would be me, would have the opportunity to give them information or evidence to show that the employer's defense is nothing but a pretext. Why wasn't I given that opportunity? Because I surely wasn't. And what I'm not going to show you listeners, and viewers, are my original emails, because it has too much information and I'd have to scan it. But I told the EEOC right off the bat that the employer fabricated information and put it in a write-up every time I made a complaint against a management level employee. Or just about every time. At that point, it was like 4, and 3 out of those 4 times, they fabricated information and asked me to sign it. But, and this is specifically for you, Michelle, and those that do work for the EEOC. A write-up for my employer is not a disciplinary action. The employer themselves has said as much. Like right before the holidays, there was only one disciplinary action against me, and that occurred after I filed my complaint. But you've already closed the case. Just ask Miss Poindexter. And now, let's scroll a little further down. I got surprise. Mr. Brubaker says, if you have any more information that you would like the EEOC to consider while deciding how to further process your charge, please submit that information to Ms. Poindexter by the given deadline. Wow. She's already decided how to process my charge, giving me a right to sue letter. That's right. She's already made a determination and closed the case. This transparent attempt at objectivity, it's just that. I've seen right through it. And you should too if you look honestly at it, Michelle. And once again, I hope you don't mind me calling you Michelle. Just differentiate between you and your subordinates. There was no reason for this. If given the opportunity to respond to the employer's allegations, and then to be given a fair and objective look at this case, would have been all that I asked. But from its very inception, the EEOC, and this is to everybody, the EEOC has tried to shuffle me along to that final destination, to that right to sue letter, because that's less work for them. Yes, that's right. That is less work for them if they could just give you that letter. You have to know that something is wrong when you continually call an agency and there's no one available to answer the phone. Doesn't matter whether you call in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and you always have to leave a message. And this was no more evident than with the office where I first filed my complaint, because no one answered their telephone either. And I questioned their ability to properly process my complaint, because even the supervisors would not answer the phone. And I don't know what his position was, but the supervisor's supervisor just apparently didn't have time to respond to a phone call or email either. Then they sent my case from, slight interruption there, but they sent my case from the originating office to the Indianapolis office, and what do we have? For the most part, the exact same thing. Because if you call to speak to somebody, no one answers the phone. You have to leave a voicemail message, but then your voicemail messages don't get returned either, unless you call somebody specific. But at least you get emails, but probably because I told Miss Poindexter, don't call me again. Email me. Just for this, the same fact or reason that you see in the email, because she said things that are not true, but now that I have it in written form, she cannot backtrack and indicate that's not what I told Mr. Jones. Now, in conclusion, well, there's maybe two things, but I just want to start out with this, and that's to any viewer out there. Know your rights. Because you have agencies that are understaffed and overwhelmed. Just for it's an easy target. Go to the public defender's office in your local county. See how many people are stacked up there, and ask them how much time they actually have to work on particular cases. Like 5 minutes maybe. Whereas, of course, the prosecuting attorney or district attorney has more than enough staff and spends a whole lot of time trying to get you thrown in jail. It appears the EEOC is understaffed and is more than willing to shuffle you along and give you a right to sue letter so that they can get that case off their desk. Because I'm going to ask you this. Show of hands, how many of you can actually afford an attorney to go to federal court to pursue a matter of discrimination or retaliation for filing a claim of discrimination? Yeah, I thought so. I'm out.